My next guest is a U.S. Congressman representing the 1st District in Nebraska. He's been a long-time advocate of human rights here at home and around the world. Here to discuss the impending renewal of the Vatican's controversial agreement with Communist China and the implications on human rights and religious freedom is Republican Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. Congressman, thank you for being here. On Tuesday, the House of Representatives passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Now, if signed into law, it would have a regional ban on all goods produced in that Xinjiang province from coming to the United States. Why focus on this region of China?
Well, Raymond, look, the world is screaming for meaning, and we have a choice. Do we want cheap stuff or do we want human dignity? And it's about time the House of Representatives and our government, and frankly our nation, recognize this insatiable march that China has toward this bizarre hybrid communistic capitalistic system that just chews up the machine built on economic nationalism. And in the meanwhile, what it does is it represses religious tradition, represses religious faith. It has severely repressed the Uyghur Muslim community. The Catholic Church itself is under great pressure. Look at what's happened in Hong Kong as they are trying to slowly eat away at the freedoms of that country. So we have a choice. Cheap stuff or standing for the principles of human dignity, which are is the foundation for civilization itself. We can dress up this capitalism in nice suits, or we can put guardrails around it and demand that there be moral virtue in the marketplace.
China's foreign ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said the bill maliciously slandered the human rights situation in Xinjiang. He said that the so-called problem of forced labor is totally a lie fabricated by some organizations and personnel in the United States and the West. Do you think this bill will have any impact on the horrible treatment of Uyghur Muslims and other religious minorities, including Catholics, in the country?
Well, at least it continues to raise consciousness about the reality of what's happening in China. And look, there's a deeper problem here. We've underwritten this whole thing in the West. We built up a manufacturing capacity based upon the hard labor of people in this country, our educational system, our roads, our capital markets, and then allowed these corporations, multinational corporations, to use our goodwill, use our resources, and then move to a place overseas where there's not only repression of human rights, there's pollution of the environment, lax labor standards, and indirect subsidies to the market system itself. This is a false market system, but we go along with it because this is control governance, in effect, by multinational corporations who are more concerned about their quarterly bottom line profits than the very systems themselves that give rise to viable capitalism, which again is moral virtue. Looking at what the fundamental purpose of business is, the well-being of peoples, the well-being of communities, the exchange of goods.
I've got to get to this Vatican deal. They've announced that they are getting ready to renew their deal with China next month. Now, this past weekend, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo wrote an op-ed in First Things magazine, and he urged the Vatican to reconsider its position vis-a-vis China. And he tweeted this out. 2 years ago, the Holy See reached an agreement with the Chinese Communist Party, hoping to help China's Catholics. Yet the CCP's abuse of the faithful has only gotten worse. The Vatican endangers its moral authority should it renew the deal. The State Department has been a strong voice for religious freedom in China and around the world and has taken steps to hold those who abuse the faithful responsible. We will continue to do so and stand with China's Catholics and religious believers. We call on the Vatican to join us. Now, the Vatican has not publicly responded, Congressman, to the Secretary's tweet or the article. What do you make of Pompeo's comments? And did you ever think the State Department would be providing moral leadership to the Vatican?
Well, that is a bit of an astonishing development, isn't it? The reality is the Vatican is caught in a vice, if you will. Listen, there's 12 million Catholics in China. The intention of the Vatican is to trying to provide the sacramental life and some degree of protection for the Catholics who are there. The concern here, and George Weigel has written on this extensively for any viewer who wants to go into it deeper, the concern here is the accommodation of the Chinese government to allow for some authority that resides in the hierarchy of the church for the selection of bishops actually undermines the ability for the church to be vibrant for the long term. So it is a horribly difficult situation to be pastoral for those who are there to try to protect them, but at the same time, leave open the possibility for the flourishing of the church in the future. And that's what's the potential problem here as we accommodate this communist regime who demands that any member of their party, by the way, declare that they have no faith.
No, it's outrageous. The Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin, admitted that nothing exciting has come of this Vatican-China deal, but he claims it allows a continuing dialogue. Is that dialogue of any use, Congressman? And is the cost, frankly, too high to bishops, the faithful, the sacraments, even the sanctity of the Scripture itself? Because the Chinese authorities have expunged it and rewritten the Scripture, inserting Xi and Mao and other Chinese demigods into the Scripture itself.
And remember, preceding this is the one-child policy of China. We've kind of forgotten all of that. This is a steady buildup of the, if you will, the secular sanitization of Chinese society around this nebulous idea of some glorious person of Xi and the glorious Chinese man, and this ideal of the collective, at the same time using a capitalistic system, at the same time repressing this fundamental sacred space of the freedom of conscience and which manifests itself in religious freedom. These things are all inconsistent and in conflict with one another. The Vatican's in a tough place. Let's just admit it. They have to protect the Catholics who are there. They don't have the power to tell the Chinese what to do. But ceding the authority over to the Chinese government may very well result in the long-term impact, undermining of the church itself there. That's the real concern.
Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, thank you. We'll leave it there. And Cardinal Zen, who's been on this show numerous times, also laid out what's at stake and what's really happening on the ground. Go to YouTube, watch those interviews for a full backgrounder on this Chinese Vatican deal. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Raymond.